I remember when I was in high school, I would go on YouTube and I would watch these students share these amazing Common App essays that you would think was written by some notable author or literary genius, not a high school student. But in today's video, I want to share with you my Common App essay, which isn't really insane by any means. And actually, after reviewing it 4 years later, I don't even think it's that great of an essay, but it still enabled me to get into several top 20 universities and even BSMD programs. I think there are quite a few good aspects about my essay which you could definitely learn from, but there's also several aspects of my essay which could have been improved. And I'll go more in depth into these aspects later into the video. So to not waste any more time, let's jump straight into my Common App essay. Despite the differences that separate many Indians and Pakistanis, for centuries biryani has brought us together. Although several varieties of the dish have evolved, the fundamental aspects, rice, meat, vegetables, and spices, have remained unchanged. For some, an obsession for biryani arises from the moment a welcoming sensation of heat envelops one's cheeks when they cut into the unbroken surface of yellowed rice. For others, biryani is home. It evokes memories of how your family once gathered around a dining room table with the smell of spices lingering through the house and the sounds of laughter following. But for me, as a child, I grew fascinated with an ingredient in biryani: the aroma enhancers. Believe it or not, South Asians add black balls, acorns, walnuts, sticks, and basically anything else we can find on a florist's floor to enhance the aroma of biryani. What particularly caught my attention was that although the aroma enhancers stood out, they never changed to fit the aesthetic of the dish. Instead, the dish was forever changed by the smells. It wasn't until I moved to Jericho, New York that I realized how much I could relate to the forest scrap found in such a beloved dish. Before moving to New York, I lived in Tampa, Florida. Although I didn't grow up in Florida, adjusting to life in it was far from complex. With roads stretched out in 4 lanes, 2 seasons to anticipate, and my cousins, aunts, and grandparents within 10 miles, Florida was effortless. I was comfortable. When I moved to New York in the middle of high school, I was forced to make a tough decision. Should I change myself to simply blend into my new environment? Surely, if I conformed to the beliefs, ideas, and traditions of my new high school, I would be more comfortable. On that note, I tried to change myself. To participate in lunchtime discussions on sports fantasy, I tried keeping up with athletes and teams who I didn't really care about. I set aside my passion for film because no one else was as interested as I was. Being the new kid, every time I raised my hand or participated in an intellectually challenging conversation a little too excitedly, I would leave another bad first impression. So I chose to repress my enthusiasm and reflect the same face of disinterest as my peers. It wasn't until my little sister cried in my arms after a day of school, pleading to want to fit in like me, that the ideas of conformity crippled. Why was I trying so desperately to fit in when throughout my childhood, my strongest moments of inspiration were gained from times where my ummi proudly wore a dupatta around her head despite the tormenting stares, and when my cousins combated blatant Islamophobia through tactful argument and confrontation? My sister sought a similar inspiration. Reminded by my family's deeply held values and my responsibility as an older brother, I rediscovered myself and added a new ingredient to Jericho High School. One place the new flavor could be found was in the Future Business Leaders of America Club. Pursuing a dream that I refused to let my move change, I became the first student in Jericho to ever become a candidate for New York State president. Simply by being myself, I have paved the path for younger members of the club wanting to create, lead, and inspire. But most importantly, I have proven to my sister the opportunities to achieve new heights by just being herself. As an individual who shapes the environment around him, I now use my enthusiasm to make learning as a whole more exciting and interesting. Even though I might stick out as the new kid, I do so fully as myself. Like the aroma enhancers, I aim to serve an irreplaceable taste in new environments. As I continue to grow, I eagerly search for new settings, whether it be in or out of school, to use my unique flavor to inspire others. Every day is a fresh plate of biryani, where I add my own flavor. And yeah, that's my Common App essay, but honestly, reading this essay back is just so cringe to me, but like, whatever. I just hope that me sharing my Common App essay helps you in any way with your own essay. So before getting into why my personal statement is ass, let's first talk about the good aspects of my essay. But before I get into my essay specifically, I just want to set a sort of general framework for what makes a great personal statement. So an amazing Common App essay will answer the following 3 questions in depth. And these questions are: who is this person? Can this person contribute something of value to our campus, and if so, what? And is this person a good writer? If your essay is able to answer these 3 questions in depth, then the likely chance is that you have a great Common App essay in your hands. So one of the first good aspects of my essay is actually in my first sentence, and in general for Common App essays, one of the things that you really want to focus on is making sure your first sentence is as impactful as it can be. Like if you look at my essay right here, my first sentence is, despite the differences that separate many Indians and Pakistanis, for centuries, biryani has brought us together. By this sentence alone, you can kind of tell that I'm giving some reflection on the culture that I've been brought up in. And through this sentence, I'm also creating a bit of curiosity inside admissions officers' minds, because how is this simple dish like biryani able to bring two very polar communities together? Another example is if your comment of essay is starting with some type of personal anecdote, or you're telling a story at the very beginning, you want to make sure that you kind of put the reader inside the middle of the story rather than just making a super boring first sentence, or like using the word imagine and like making a sentence like, imagine you were in a house. Like, no one wants to read that. It's like super low level writing. So you just want to make sure that the first sentence inside your essay really captures the reader's attention and makes them want to continue reading. Another aspect of my essay, which I thought was really good, and which you'll notice about a lot of really amazing comment up essays that you read online, is that as I'm explaining the lessons that I learned from the conflict that I face inside my story, the growth that I'm talking about is not something that's already been fully realized. Like, I haven't learned everything that there was to learn from the conflicts that I face inside the story, and that my growth is continuing kind of as most things are in life. And so in this way, I'm able to kind of say how the lessons that I've learned will continue to inform my future actions. And this can clearly be seen inside this part of my essay, which basically is inside the conclusion. It says, even though I might stick out as the new kid, I do so fully as myself. Like the aroma enhancers, I aim to serve an irreplaceable taste in new environments, and as I continue to grow, I eagerly search for new settings, whether it be in or out of school, to use my unique flavor to inspire others. So in this way, it's like my learning isn't fully done with this process, but it's something that I've made progress towards in growth. But I realize that there's still more to overcome in terms of these obstacles, and it just reflects a lot of emotional maturity to admissions officers. And this is something that they like to see inside comment of essays, rather than a student who just acts like they have it all figured out, and that whatever conflict they went through, they learned absolutely everything they could, and it just reflects a very fixed mindset if you basically try to claim that you just know everything that you need to know at all times. And the next aspect, which makes my comment of essay good, and is actually kind of several things that I kind of just put under one umbrella term, and that is authenticity. Now, authenticity involves several different writing elements. There's a lot of different things and strategies that you can use to be more authentic inside your writing, and one of the ways that I was really trying to be authentic through my comment of essay is just a fact of how many values I kind of revealed about myself through my essay alone. Just to give some examples, I mean, the part where I talk about what has inspired me in terms of my family and the culture that I've been brought up in. I mean, I refer to my grandma as my ummi, which is the cultural way for how I refer to my grandma. I talked about how she wears a dupatta around her head, kind of symbolizing how I'm Muslim. And even inside the next sentence, I talk about how my cousins combated blatant Islamophobia, kind of talking more so about my Muslim background and how that's kind of affected me growing up. I also talked about my role as an older brother a lot, which is something that's really important to my life and definitely shaped the person I am today in many ways. And there's just several little things inside my essay where I kind of just describe some of the values that are important to me. And another thing which can make your comment up essay come across as more authentic is obviously the tone in which you write. I feel like for most pieces of writing, I usually don't write at a super like high level in terms of like vocabulary or anything like that, because I try to keep it as relatable as possible. I mean, there's so many times throughout the essay where I could have chosen to use bigger words or more fancy sentence structure, but I just decided to keep it simple because it's more closer to how I actually talk while still maintaining English standards for writing. One thing that you might notice as you read my essay is that a lot of the sentences are pretty short, and I don't try to like really make the sentences super fancy, and that's all purposeful. And one of my favorite books and authors that I read in high school was actually Susan Collins and like the whole Hunger Games book series. And the reason that her writing is so impactful is not because she makes the sentences super complex or the vocabulary that she uses like super hard to understand. It's more so because every single word that she uses in each sentence is impactful and actually contributes to the meaning of the overall story. And so that's what I tried to make sure I did with my essay, is just make sure that even though there wasn't a lot of words per sentence, that each word was holding an impact and it was actually adding something to the essay. And then one of the final good aspects about my essay is that even though I describe a sort of sentimental topic of moving, I don't go about the traditional route and try to like seek sympathy for my move or anything like that. I'm not like trying to create a sob story here, and instead I kind of show how this event really influenced the person that I became and the person that I grew to become, rather than just trying to seek pity throughout the whole essay, which is something that is really important and you really want to be careful of when you're writing topics that may be sensitive to you, like someone passing away or you losing someone or something. And that's just a common error that a lot of students run into when writing their personal statement. So now moving on to the bad aspects of my essay, one of the first bad aspects of my essay is honestly the topic of moving, just because it's such a common personal statement topic, especially for kids with military parents who just have to move around every single 3 or 4 years. Like, it's not a super unique topic, but just because it's a common college essay topic does not necessarily make it a bad essay automatically. Like, I was able to make my own college essay about moving distinct from other essays about moving by adding all these different elements that are super unique to me, kind of like comparing myself to the aromatics and biryani and explaining the different amounts of growth that I felt from the experiences that I had. And also I talked a lot about my cultural upbringing and the inspirations inside my life, which made my essay distinct from other moving essays. But nonetheless, the reason that this is still a somewhat bad aspect is because inside an admissions officer's head, my essay is just another essay that they read that same day that's about moving, despite however many random factors I added. So if you can, I would recommend coming up with a college essay topic which is unique. But even if you write about a common essay topic, like similar to how I did, you want to make sure that your common app essay topic is different from all the other essays that are written on the same topic as yours. The next bad aspect of my essay is that it was just too long, and I feel like I just tried to do way too much with it. Do I really think that I needed 2 paragraphs in my intro just to set up the metaphor for the rest of my essay? Not really, and I think I definitely should have cut this down looking back at it. My essay was around 650 words, and this was simply just way too long. I mean, just think from the perspective of an admissions officer for one sec, who reads hundreds of college essays every single day, and chances are they're not gonna wanna read a super long college essay which nearly meets the 650 word count unless they're anticipating something while reading it. What I mean by this is that if you look at my own essay, at the beginning I make this claim about how I'm similar to these spices in biryani, but I don't explain why until the last paragraph. The sentence that I'm talking about is, it wasn't until I moved to Jericho, New York that I realized how much I could relate to this forest scrap found in such a beloved dish. So at this point, I kind of just explained that I relate to these spices in biryani, but the reader has to keep reading, or an admissions officer has to keep reading to find out why exactly I'm relating to these random spices inside biryani. And it's not until the last paragraph that I actually reveal the why through the lessons that I learned and through bringing the connection home. So the next aspect which makes my essay kind of bad is that I used a metaphor to describe myself. One of the generally accepted notions inside this college application space is to try to avoid using metaphors inside your Common App essay. But the reason that I decided to ignore this well-intentioned piece of advice is because I thought that this was an object that admissions officers had probably never heard of before or read an essay about before, and also this object reflected my cultural upbringing inside a really unique way. But for that being said, for most cases, you want to try to avoid using metaphors inside your college essays, especially if it's something like you relate to a stethoscope because you want to be a cardiologist. Like, that just sounds super unauthentic and something that you really want to try to avoid. And the last aspect of my essay, which I wish I could go back and change, is my final sentence. Now, in case you guys forgot, my final sentence is, every day is a fresh plate of biryani, where I add my own flavor. Reading it back now, I realize how unauthentic it sounds, and I just wish I removed that sentence and I just ended my essay with the sentence previous. This final sentence doesn't really add much value, and it kind of just makes it seem like I was overdoing the metaphor. Like, I had already discussed the metaphor enough throughout the essay to the point where I didn't need to be cheesy like this at the end. And that sums up all the good and the bad of my Common App essay. There's always so much more advice I have about the Common App essay in general, but I don't want this video to end up being like 30 minutes long, so if you guys want to see future videos on this topic, please make sure to drop a comment down below. Anyways, I really hope you found this video useful, and if you did, please don't forget to subscribe, and until next time, peace!